What's going on, everybody, and welcome to my little sort of side endeavor with the podcast Wise Guys Hideaway. It's going to be sort of just like a kind of just like explanation of things that the episode might be talking about, but we don't quite cover in depth. And for that today, I chose meeting in Appalachian because earlier in the podcast, David Brexpear, and myself, we discussed his sort of some of his conspiracy theories or some of his thoughts on different aspects of the Appalachian meeting. And what the Appalachian meeting was single-handedly the biggest and most notarized meeting of mob bosses from the world over. I mean, we're talking you had individuals from Montreal, you had different bosses allegedly there from Sicily, Italy. I mean, everywhere in the United States. All five families from New York, the Chicago outfit, different fractions from LA, Detroit. I mean, you name it, they were there. By the way, I hope to soon eventually just be back in sync with doing the podcast while filming it. Like I said, however, I was recording on one phone, filming on another, and the one phone took a shit, so I'm sort of having to split my time up. But the Appalachian meeting took place on November 14th, 1957, in Appalachian, New York. A little, not a little, actually a very large mafia compound at 625 McFall Road in Appalachian. And the house actually belonged to Joseph Joe the Barber Barbara, who was the boss of the Buffalo Mob. And his house hadn't really been the original place for the meeting. Like, it wasn't the original construct. They originally wanted to do it in Chicago, but the overseer of Chicago at that time. You can call him the boss, but Tony Arcado was always kind of the boss. But the front boss, most definitely, Sam Momo Giancana, he shot it down. To what? Why? And I mean, I guess I understand why, because I mean, you're gonna have a hundred fucking wise guys just pile into downtown Chicago. You might as well wear a sign. So he turned it down, and there were a few options kicked around, but I mean, and then eventually they just Vito Genovese, that is, Vito Genovese just decided that he was going to put the arrangements in the hand of the Buffalo boss, Stefano the Undertaker Magadino, and then that's when he put Joseph Barbaro and Russell Buffalino in charge. So that's how the events all sort of played into them attending a meeting at a known high echelon mobster's actual compound. Now at this time, Genovese has sort of made his move to take control of what was originally the Luciano family and was given to Costello once Luciano was deported in 1936. And so once Genovese made his move, that being he enlisted the help of the future boss of the family, but the young street soldier by the name of Vinny the Chen Gigante, just the Chen, and then we call him Vinny the Chen. But he enlisted his help, and he attempts to hit on Frank at Frank's apartment building. You know, the famous quote is, he said, this one's for you, Frank. Frank Costello turns, and Vincent the Chen, bah, fires a shot at skims Frank Costello's head, and eventually the Chen's arrested. Costello goes to trial. The whole thing goes to trial, and Costello says he doesn't recognize, Gigante. On the way out, Gigante, thanks Frank. And after that, I mean, Costello really just kind of, counted his blessings and sort of gave Genovese the family on a silver platter, which, I mean, I probably would have done the same thing. Vito Genovese was a vicious, vicious son of a bitch. He did not take no for an answer very well, and he was also very powerful. I mean, the guy had plugs into everything from his time that he was in Sicily. And I mean, he he was even known to barter and have workings with Mussolini and other various factions of the Communist Party. And I mean, he was really a force to be reckoned with, you guys. Like, Vito Genovese was not somebody you wanted to take lightly. If he was your enemy, it was a very, very bad thing for you. Now, Genovese conspires with another up and coming mobster by the name of Carlo Gambino, who's the underboss in the Anastasia family. And Gambino, to me anyway, is one of the smartest, if not the smartest, uh, mob boss of all time. He always just kind of knew how to, calmly and collectively and almost meticulously like guide his way into being where he needed to be exactly when he needed to be there, and doing so with having done very very little prison and or jail time, and very few attempts on his life were ever made. Very few were ever even near fatal. Normally, it got nixed before it even took off. But so him and Genovese sort of conspired to take out the probably one of the more ruthless mob bosses that ever existed, even more so than Genovese himself. Albert, Lord High Executioner Anastasia, did an episode on him a few back, because at this period in time, Anastasia has just pretty much burned every bridge he's got left. He's selling buttons. He had the murder of a civilian committed on orders, um, over just seeing somebody on the nightly news, who turned in a bank robber who wasn't even mob related, and yeah, he had him killed. As well as Anastasia had always just done shifty things all the way through his climb to the top, and they'd always kind of let him get away with it. But I mean, once Luciano went, and once he burned every bridge he had left, nobody really cried when Anastasia went. Actually, in fact, only 12 people attended his funeral, so nobody cried. I mean, he was also just a really, really mean person. There's stories of him when Gambino was his underboss, Anastasia sort of degrading him and even open hand slapping him in front of other high echelon members of the family, which you shouldn't do. You're second in commands. That's supposed to be like you guys are. It's supposed to be you two against all these fuckers, because you got to be guessing that at least one or two crews want to take the spot you're at. So so Anastasia mainly just tried to run his family through fear, murder, and greed, and it eventually caught up to him on October 25th, 1957, at the Park Sheraton Hotel in the barbershop. And afterwards, there's some things are put into place in order for the Appalachian meeting to happen. And along with many topics needing to be discussed at the Appalachian meeting, including where all the bosses stand on narcotics trafficking, where they were standing on loan sharking and gambling, and different union ties they had, and also it was so that Anastasia's sort of immense empire was divided up equally amongst everybody who sat on the commission. And it was also the meeting that was going to induct Carlo Gambino as boss. Vito Genovese is who plotted, and it's his original thought to have this meeting. And so once the date's set, once the place is set, uh, it just sort of starts falling into place. And then on November 14th, 1957, early into the day, we're talking like early morning, maybe even early afternoon. There's a couple different theories. Some people think that the meeting was tipped off. Some people believe that uh, the feds actually were paid to stay away, and beat cops just managed to, you know, stumble upon a gold mine. But the primary story told is that a regular black and white was driving through Appalachia, just doing what cops do, and noticed a bunch of real extravagant Cadillacs and Lincolns and other cars that most people around that area just didn't drive, or if they drove they weren't they didn't have the big flaunty versions, as well as I mean these guys were wearing signs here in Appalachia. I mean they're coming from Manhattan, Staten Island, Detroit, all sorts. I mean you got people standing out like sore thumbs, all sorts of accents. And I mean, it said that just a regular beat cop actually sort of tipped off the bureau, and kind of helped to make sure the whole meeting got broke up. Really, it was a terrible idea from the get go, if you ask me. But I mean, I guess they hadn't done it yet. I mean, they had a couple meetings before. I mean, when they formed the commission, they had a fairly large meeting, but Appalachian was huge. I mean, there's estimated, and these are just, I mean, these are just conservative estimations, that there was up to 100 high echelon made La Cosa Nostra members at the meeting that day. We know for sure about 60, because 60 members, once the police get it all barricaded and they put up roadblocks and they go to move in on the meeting, I mean, these guys just take off. I mean, you flick the light on, the cockroaches scatter. You know what I mean? So they all just go different directions. Some are in the woods, some are in fields, some, I mean, some get caught up. And in total, 60 members are detained and indicted. 22 of them are charged with conspiring to obstruct justice by lying about an organized crime meeting. That's a mouthful of a charge to say. Um, all of them, all 22 of them, the 22 that were indicted, are found guilty in January of 1959. All are ordered to pay a $10,000 fine, and then most of them are sentenced between 3 to 5 years in prison. But within a year, every single one of them is overturned by appeal. So I mean, that just goes to show. I mean, one, that they were kind of trumped up charges, but two, how much power and wealth the mob actually had, and like how solid of law teams these guys could afford. You know what I mean? Like they sentence you to 3 to 5 years, and I mean you walk out in 60 days because you just gotta go through some court dockets and some BS. I mean that's pretty impressive. What it did do though is because it made headlines, because it made papers, because it made every news outlet, you know, this side of the Mississippi and even on the other side of the Mississippi, because it had, you know, LA guys out there, all sorts. I mean, it was big. It was big news. The FBI and J. Edgar Hoover, who had, you know, up until now, and even sort of once this happened, still worked his way around it. Still just kind of like tiptoed around it, but he had to acknowledge that there was, in fact, organized crime here in America. He had to acknowledge the fact that La Cosa Nostra was actually real and that it was an actual real criminal organization and that they did exist and that it wasn't just individual, you know, hoodlums who sort of group up with a few people and that there wasn't a higher, you know, higher echelon. He was quoted saying one time that there couldn't be any such thing as organized crime because there's no way criminals could be organized. Well, he had to eat those words. He had to eat those words once Appalachian happened, let me tell you. Now, among those that are picked up, among those that were arrested, this is this is sort of what highlights the whole thing is because names like Genovese, Gambino, you know, Joe Profaci, Joe Bonanno, I mean, they're all they're all detained, you know, because they scatter here, there, and all they're all picked up, and all of them claim to be visiting an ill Joseph, Joe the barber, Barbara. You know, they say he had fallen ill, and that they were there, you know, consoling their friend and just, you know, sort of trying to make them feel better. And of course, you know, nobody's believing that. I mean, half of them have these real thick accents, and you know, the other half are telling you to go fuck yourself when you ask them, you know, any kind of question. Guys like Genovese probably are just telling you to go fuck yourself every time you ask them something in an interrogation room. I don't doubt that for a second. But yeah, I mean, it really sort of showed the world that there was this underworld sort of society of individuals who came together to unite under the flag of one thing, and that was making money illegally by any means. And there's never been a meeting um, like that since Appalachian. They've never once attempted it. It's done, you know, very privately, very off the books, and never the entire commission board and all their right hand echelon coming together in one location all at once. It just they will. I'll give it to the mob on this. They will never make this mistake again. I don't think they've they haven't learned on some things, like the rule that, you know, you don't kill your boss, or like, you know, to just, I mean, that whole little bit to where like guys are always gonna kill bosses to move ahead to become the boss. So like that's never going anywhere. The whole how you don't sell drugs, but there's always going to be wise guys that sell drugs because drugs make a lot of money. You know, it's just done with a wink and a nod. Don't get caught. You get caught. You know, you might die. You might not. It depended. It's just depended on how much they liked you or who you worked for. You know, who you earned for. You know, it just depended. But yeah, Appalachian definitely became a real pivotal focus point too once Joe Valachi begins testifying and giving his statements, and it's a big focus in the Valachi papers. And I mean, it's been brought up in all sorts of pop culture. You know, Goodfellas mentions it. Analyze This with Robert De Niro and Billy Crystal mentions it. I think even I think even The Simpsons have a little spoof something of it. I mean, like it's definitely a known a known piece of mob history in a sort of not so directly known way. Like, I mean, most people probably have heard of Appalachian, New York, and it just has such a ring to it, and you don't know why. But I genuinely would think it would be because of the Appalachian meeting getting busted up. Might not be either. I mean, I guess there's the Appalachian Mountains too. So, like, that's just my personal opinion. But like, it definitely holds its own significance in organized crime history, and it was definitely a ballsy move, a ballsy thought on Genovese's part to get all these guys together and sort of declare where he sat amongst his throne, as head of his family, that Gambino would take over Anastasia's family. Anastasia's stuff would be divided up. It really kind of shows the sort of the God complex of what it takes to be a mob boss. Vito Genovese feeling that he needs to organize and put together a meeting of all the top all the top members of the Cosa Nostra, and not only that, then pegging it off on somebody else to arrange it and find the meeting spot. I am still surprised though that Sam Giancana got to just nix the idea just on his own. I do kind of wonder if it was then kind of relayed through Tony Arcado, and Arcado shot it down too. Like, yeah, no, I don't care if Momo says you could or not. I don't want that happening in Chicago. So that's something I would actually like to look into, and that I might research here soon and write a little piece on. But I just want to give you guys a little insight of what the Appalachian Meeting was all about. I'm gonna start doing little side pieces like this on YouTube after I do full length podcasts with whether it be Rob, shouts out Boston Rob, what I mean, or David, shout out to David. That was a great episode earlier. I had a blast. Whoever it might be, just the topic we talk about, like things we kind of breeze over and like just talk back and forth to each other about, assuming everybody knows. I plan on coming here to sort of give you the oversight of all that stuff. So, hope you enjoy it. I appreciate you all listening, appreciate you all viewing, and I'll catch you later. Have a great week, everybody.